everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to announce the winner of the viewer-submitted deck contest, and then take that deck out for a spin. So thank you guys for your submissions. There were a lot of really cool decks submitted. Sadly, I must pick one as the winner, and without further ado, your winner is Anthausa Citizen Who? This deck was submitted by YouTube user Danny Talon. And I love that he actually put in the name of the deck, Who? Because I had never heard of this commander before. I didn't really play during Theros block that much. So anyway, I had never seen Anthausa before. I thought this looked like a really cool deck, and looks like a ton of fun to play, so that's why I ended up selecting Anthausa Citizen Hero as the winner. Let's take a look at Anthausa. So Anthausa Citizen Heroes, 5 mana, 3 colorless, 2 green, for a 4/5 with Heroic. Whenever you cast a spell that targets Anthausa, up to 3 target lands you control each become 2/2 warrior creatures until end of turn. They're still lands. Let's take a quick peek at some of the more interesting things in the deck. We're a mono green deck, we have a ton of ramp, and to some degree this deck does care about the number of lands that we have, since we'll be turning them into creatures, and we'll probably lose a few along the way. So we have Boundless Realms, Cultivate, things like that, accelerate our lands. We have Cyclical Evolution. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn, and that gets exiled with 3 time counters on it and comes back every 3 turns. So that's fun. We have Azuri's Predation, just a good stuff green card. Gives you a bunch of beast tokens that usually end up killing a good chunk of your opponent's creatures. Really cool to see Howl of the Night pack. I don't see that all that often. 7 mana, put a 2/2 green wolf token into play for each forest you control. So when you're playing mono green, this can potentially be 7 or more wolf tokens that you're putting into play. Seems like it should be really cool. We have some overrun effects with Overwhelming Stampede, Rishkar's Expertise to draw some cards. And so a lot of the cards in this deck are made to target Anthausa, so we can turn our lands into warriors, and then we'll have various ways to pump up our warriors and use those to go on the attack. So here's the description from the deck's creator. It describes the deck as, its biggest advantage is that it seems very non-threatening. You dirtle around in the early game, and then suddenly explode in one turn and take out 1 or 2 players in combat in one swing. There's a lot of single-target pump spells, which let you dictate whose creatures win in combat. I kind of like this. It has a lot of cool cards that you only usually see in draft. It's fun to see a lot of those showing up in Commander. So it goes on to mention with things like Coat of Arms and other pump effects, if you're playing paper, it is actually very hard to track what the power and toughness of your creatures is. Fortunately, on Magic Online, we don't have that problem. It'll track everything for us, which is really nice. Anyway, so I'm excited to give this deck a try. I made only a couple small changes to the deck list, and these were purely based on cost. Originally, I wasn't going to run Bane of Progress because it was like $25 on Magic Online. When building this deck, I found out that it was actually just reprinted, so it's come down to about 5 ticks on Magic Online. Since I found out it's gotten significantly cheaper, I was actually able to pick up a copy, and I've been needing to pick up a copy anyway. Bane of Progress is a very good card. The only other change that I made, I took out Beast Within and slotted Ugin the Spirit Dragon into that slot instead. To be plainly honest, I just didn't feel like paying a few dollars for Beast Within on Magic Online. There's a lot of other ways that we can get good removal, since I already had Ugin and this deck wants to make a lot of mana anyway. Other than that, I slotted out just a couple forests for Strip Mine, Tectonic Edge, and Ghost Quarter, just because occasionally you run into problematic lands, and I just wanted to make sure that I had answers for those. Other than those 2 small changes, this is almost an exact copy of what was submitted. So anyway, I can't wait to check out some gameplay with this deck. Let's go find a game. So here we are, Commander time, playing some Anthausa Citizen Who? Looks like we won the die roll. This looks like a reasonable starting hand, so we'll go ahead and keep this. So like I said, we're playing Anthausa Citizen Hero, winner of the viewer-submitted deck contest. We'll be facing off against Neheb the Eternal, new card out of Hour of Devastation. 5 mana, has Afflict 3. Whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add 1 red mana to your mana pool for each life your opponents have lost this turn. Seems cool. I'm interested to see where our opponent takes this deck. I haven't really looked into any Neheb decks at all, so I'm not really sure what to expect. So our turn, we will go ahead, drop a forest, and tap out. So next we have Maelstrom Wanderer. Maelstrom Wanderer gives creatures you control haste and cascades twice when it comes into play. Maelstrom Wanderer is a very strong commander and has been for a very long time. Probably going to ramp into some big creatures and do some extra turn things and all kinds of nastiness. Probably one of the commanders that I like seeing the least, especially in a 1v1. And then finally, we have Xenagos, God of Revels, 6/5 indestructible, is not a creature if your devotion to red and green is less than 7. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste, and +X/+X, where X is that creature's power. Xenagos is going to be making some big creatures really big, and probably be super threatening. You can basically die in one swing from a Xenagos opponent. So play our Forest, play our Emerald Medallion, pass the turn. Our turn 3, we draw a Sylvan Advocate. So let's drop our forest, play a Cultivate, get 2 forests, and play the Sylvan Advocate. Pass a turn, so able to have a solid turn off of the Emerald Medallion right there. Pilgrim's Eye for the Neheb opponent. They're going to search for a land. Put it into their hand. Kodama's Reach for the Maelstrom opponent. Before they actually had the competitive 1 vs 1 commander format, I used to just play a lot of casual 1 vs 1, and Maelstrom Wanderer was just an absolute beating to play against. Because I never really had a way to stop them from ramping, and with that Cascade ability, they're usually cascading into more things that make it so they can always recast Maelstrom Wanderer, and it was just such a difficult thing to play against. Bow of Nylea for the Xenagos opponent. Creatures they control have Death Touch, and a whole bunch of other abilities that they can use by paying 2 and tapping. So back to our turn, we draw a forest, play our forest. This seems like a good time to lay down our commander. So Anthausa, Citizen Hero coming into play. I'm just going to take a light poke at the Maelstrom Wanderer opponent. Again, for my previous hard feelings of getting my ass kicked a whole bunch by Maelstrom Wanderer in the 1 vs 1 games, so they can take that. I'll probably target them down pretty hard because I kind of want to see what the Neheb deck is going to do. So Ash Cloud Phoenix for the Neheb opponent. It's a 4/1 flying. When it dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. You can pay 6 to morph it. And when it's turned face up, it deals 2 damage to each player. And we've got a Moto Error. Alright, so we are back after the Moto Error. Elemental Bond for our opponent. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield, under your control, draw a card. That's pretty cool. I should check that out for some of the big creature decks. Sol Ring for the Xenagos opponent. Xenagos coming into play. We draw another forest. So let's drop our forest. So we have this Whip Silk, which seems really good with Anthausa. So we're going to go ahead and try this out and see if we can hit for a whole bunch of damage. So Whip Silk on Anthausa. Anthausa gets a trigger. 3 lands into creatures. Oh, and Sylvan Advocate gives those lands +2/+2. That is pretty crazy. So we're going to go put a hurting on the Maelstrom Wanderer opponent. Maelstrom Wanderer opponent down to 18. Wow. Damn. So this is actually the first time that I'm playing this deck. So far, it seems pretty good. It's turn 5, and we just hit for like 20 damage. Neheb the Eternal coming into play. Ash Cloud Phoenix coming at us. Not much we can do about it. Down to 36. Opponent gets 4 mana on their second main phase. Another opponent's asking, wait, why are we killing the Maelstrom Wanderer opponent so fast? Ethereum Horn Sorcerer coming into play for the Maelstrom opponent. They're going to get a Cascade trigger. Telling opponents to I never liked Maelstrom Wanderer that much. Kind of OP. So opponent plays an Acidic Slime and decides to blow up one of our forests. Opponent says, yeah, that was true 5 years ago. Bad memories, I guess. What is this? Tornado Elemental. Enters the battlefield, deals 6 damage to each creature with flying. May have it assigned combat damage as though it weren't blocked. Meh, seems cool. Oh, that's going to get haste and huge. Well, hopefully it doesn't come our way. It probably will, but let's hope that it doesn't. All right, so the 12/12 going at the Neheb opponent, and they take it. They go down to 28. Ah, crap, I forgot to bounce the Whip Silk back to our hand. We'll play the Reliquary Tower. I'm not going to be able to get in so easily now. Acidic Slime is kind of annoying. I think the right thing to do here, it's not super profitable, but I still think sending in some lands at the Wanderer opponent is still the right choice. So we get another trigger. We are going to lose one of them to the Acidic Slime. So my goal here is to entice Xenagos opponent to kill the Maelstrom Wanderer. So Maelstrom Wanderer drops to 13. We lose another forest in the process. The forest takes down the Acidic Slime, but the Death Touch on the Acidic Slime takes down another forest. So we're getting a little bit light on lands. Probably going to have to be a little bit careful. That's a Storm Breath Dragon. Oh my. So Neheb going real hard after the Xenagos opponent. Gets 12 mana on the second main phase. Here come the Eldrazi? Yep, here comes the Eldrazi. That's an Ulamog. Let's see what it goes after. So Ulamog targeted Xenagos, which was dumb because Xenagos has Indestructible, and that does a whole lot of nothing. Problem is that now there's an Ulamog on the board, and just to make it worse, with Lightning Greaves on it. So that's going to be a real problem. Inferno Titan coming into play. He shot Neheb's morph creatures with the Inferno Titan. Rishkar's Expertise. Opponent's going to draw some cards. Opponent's upset. Alright, So opponent plays Hull Breach to take down the Lightning Greaves, which is good news. Unfortunately, we lost our Whip Silk, and now Neheb the Eternal is down to 16 after the attack. So drop a forest. We drew Alpha Status. What's this do? Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares a creature type with it. The lands are warriors, so we'll get a bunch of lands, so that'll give +6/+6 to Anthausa. It's not bad. We definitely need to lignify this Ulamog. So we'll just start with that. Ulamog is now an 04. Fortunately, I don't really have a solution. Maelstrom Wanderer is definitely gonna come at us pretty hard, and I don't really know how to solve that problem. Although, I guess, yeah, I suppose we just attack into the Maelstrom Wanderer, keep draining their life down. So play alpha status. Oh, crap. Oh, and Thousa's a 10-11. Damn. I guess +6/+6 does that. I don't think we can afford to lose any more lands, so I guess we just send in Anthausa. Blocks with the Ethereum Horn. Ethereum Horn down. And pass our turn. Burnished Heart for the Neheb opponent. So Maelstrom Wanderer coming into play, double Cascade triggers going on the stack. Ew, Rain of Thorns. Ugh, that's a card. That, by the way, is a card that should definitely see more of in Commander. It shows up once in a while, but not nearly as much as it should. Yeah, he's hitting us pretty hard with it. We get a land. Ugh. Yeah, that sucks. And a Staff of Nin. So I'm sure that I'm not playing this deck optimally, but one thing to consider is that maybe it's worth having some cards that, pull lands out of the graveyard. Inferno Titan coming at us, takes down our Sylvan Advocate, and Staff and ends us down to 28. Bortusk Liege coming into play, and Asceticism coming into play. Opponent's not happy that we're targeting them down super hard. That's a 14/14 Tornado Elemental. So Xenagos is going after Neheb real hard. We've been going after Wanderer real hard. A lot of 1v1 matches happening in this particular game. Neheb goes down to 2. Wow. 1 with Nature. Search your library. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, search your library for basic land. Put it onto the battlefield tapped. Hunter's Insight. Yeah, we could definitely use Hunter's Insight. Yeah, let's just attack Wanderer. So opponent's going to block. So cast the Vines of Vastwood with Kicker. We're not going to target any of our lands, just so we don't risk getting them blown up. Maelstrom Wanderer down. Acidic Soil deals damage to each player equal to the number of lands he or she controls. Oh, that's silly. That's an interesting card, actually. Someone said that's the reddest thing I've ever seen. They killed themselves, went out on their own terms. Yeah, can't blame them. Wormcoil Engine for the Maelstrom opponent. Pings us down to 23 with the Staff of Nin. Inferno Titan coming at us. Pings us with the Inferno Titan. Hits us with the Inferno Titan. We are down to 14. So Xenagos should be able to kill both of us right here. Bow of Nylea putting a +1/+1 counter on the Xenagos. It's now a 9/8. Thorn Elemental. Signs combat damage as though it weren't blocked, and has hexproof. Thanks to Asceticism. Xenagos triggers, and that's huge. So yeah, opponents are accusing me of playing poorly. I definitely prioritize making sure that Maelstrom Wanderer doesn't win over myself actually winning the game. And in that front, things worked out swimmingly. There are some decks that just annoy me terribly, and I will prioritize making sure that they lose over myself actually winning the game. Oh yeah, definitely rub Wanderer the wrong way. So Xenagos wins. Initial thoughts on the deck, it feels really powerful. I mean, it doesn't seem like super competitive powerful. We had the Emerald Battalion, and then we hit the Nissa's Pilgrimage, and we had a lot of lands quickly, and with the Sylvan Advocate, we were able to pump out some damage really fast. Unfortunately, we didn't kill the opponent we were targeting, which eventually led to them more or less killing us. They burned all of their removal on us, so that eventually led to our not winning the game. But I was very surprised about how the deck plays. I'm definitely going to play another game, because that game I really did prioritize just trying to kill that Maelstrom Wanderer instead of making actual quote-unquote correct plays. So, by going after Wanderer as hard as I did, really set up the Xenagos to just easily mop up the board. I'm definitely going to do another game with Anthausa, now that I have some idea about how the deck actually plays. Okay, so I've played a few games with Anthausa, and I noticed it was having some problems with things, so I ended up making a few changes to the deck that was submitted, just because the Magic Online meta is pretty unforgiving. People are usually playing pretty high-powered decks. One of the games I played, everyone was playing a ton of Planeswalkers, and there were multiple Ugins on the board, and we really just couldn't hang. When Anthausa gets removed, this deck does a lot of nothing. So I ended up making some changes to the deck just to give this deck a little more oomph and see if we can do well in the game. Not that we necessarily need to win, but we'd at least like to pound out some big damage and maybe take one or two players with us. So let's talk about the things that I've added. I added Sylvan Library to get some additional card draw. I was falling short on cards, missing land drops, things like that, which are very bad. I cut Berserk just because Berserk didn't feel like it was really needed. I cut Cyclical Evolution just because I cast it last game and it was pretty underwhelming. Maybe it's okay, but it seems like there's better options for that type of card. I added Rites of Flourishing because that's everything we want to be doing, which is drawing more cards and playing additional lands, because our lands are going to be our creatures, so we want to get as many of those into play as we can. I added Crucible of Worlds because when your lands become creatures, you will lose some of them in combat, so Crucible of Worlds gives us a way to get our lands back after we lose them in combat. I added Garruk Wildspeaker just for a little more power, untap some lands, make some beasts, and eventually we can get to the Overrun effect, which is very good. I also added Overrun. We were running Overwhelming Stampede initially, so if you're running Overwhelming Stampede, there's no reason not to run Overrun as well, and Garruk Wildspeaker is another source of Overrun effects. I also added in Hunting Wilds, since it's also very synergistic to what we're trying to do. It'll help us get some more forests, added in Ranger's Path to make sure that we're getting more forests. Other than that, those are basically the changes that I made. So just a little bit more card draw, a little bit more ramp, and a little bit of redundancy on the Overrun effects. So I'm gonna fire this deck up again, and hopefully the next game goes better. Alright, so we are back playing some Anthausa Citizen Who? Alright, we only have 2 lands on our opening hand, but there is a Kineos opponent. I think I'm going to keep, because as long as we find a 3rd land, we can hit the Rites of Flourishing, and life will be good. Let's take a look at what our opponents are playing. We have Kineos and Tyro of Miletus, usually a group hug style deck. Gives each player the chance to play an additional land or draw a card on Kineos' end step. We have Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create a 1/1 green snake creature with Death Touch. So, going to be some kind of token and -1/-1 counter kind of deck. And then finally we have Balthor the Defiled. Commander I haven't seen all that much of. Minion creatures get +1/+1. Exile Balthor the Defiled. Each player returns all black and red creature cards from his or her graveyard to the battlefield. So, typically a Reanimator kind of deck. We are playing Anthausa Citizen Hero. Alright, so we draw not a land. Not great. 2 more chances to draw that 3rd land. After that, we should be good. It's 38 lands in the deck. Games with Kineos and Tyro of Miletus can get really crazy. When people have way more lands than they're supposed to really early in the game, it really kind of messes up the normal flow of a game. Crypt Keeper coming into play. Sacrifice Crypt Keeper to exile target card from a graveyard. Not bad. Alright, sweet. We drew our 3rd land. So let's drop our forest and tap out and pass. Howling Mine coming into play. Excellent. So Howling Mine should also help us draw into more lands, which is what we want right now. When you have a Kineos opponent at the table, or some type of other group hug commander, you can do things that are a little bit riskier with your hand, because there's a good chance that you'll be drawing into more cards than you would on your own normally. Lightning Greaves coming down for the Hapatra opponent. Have the pretty masterpiece version. Unfortunately, that does mean they can get Hapatra into play next turn and start doing stuff. And a Diregraph Colossus for the Balthor opponent. So it looks like they're playing a Zombie Reanimator. So Balthor swings in at the Hapatra opponent. Hapatra down to 38. Back to our turn. Howling Mine trigger going on the stack. And we draw land. Alright. So drop our Darksteel Citadel. Play Rites of Flourishing. And drop our Blighted Woodland. And pass turn. So now everyone's going to draw 3 cards on their turn and get to play 2 lands. So this game is probably going to get real wacky real quick. Luckily for us, we have this Howl of the Night pack. So the more forests we can get into play, the more crazy this Howl of the Night pack will get. Sylvan Library coming into play for the Kineos opponent. Because what they really needed was more card draw. Good news, we have this Ugin in our hand. And, especially with Balthor, where they're looking to reanimate a lot of things, exiling can be really important. Also, Ugin will help to keep this game kind of under control. With all the card draw and the Rites of Flourishing, everyone's going to have a ton of lands, so Ugin gives us a good way to keep everyone else under control. Cultivate for the Hapatra. Also, the Hapatra opponent did lay down a Westvale Abbey, so that's something we'll have to pay attention to. Elvish Scrapper coming into play. Can be sacked to destroy target artifact. Blighted Fen for the Balthor opponent. And a Graph Harvest, and Cemetery Reaper coming into play. Going to create another zombie off of the Diregraph Colossus. Zombies you control have menace. Exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a 2/2 black zombie. Seems good. So, zombies going back into the Hapatra opponent. Hapatra down to 32. We get some triggers. Howling Mine and Rites of Flourishing. Draw some lands, play both of our lands, and cast our commander. Opponent asks, had a bad Hapatra experience? Yeah, they're targeting them down pretty good. Hapatra, I've only seen it once or twice, but it can be pretty nasty. Pass the turn. Kaneo's coming into play. So Kaneo's ability going on the stack. We do not have any lands in hand, so we will have to take the card draw. Wouldn't mind drawing into a few more lands. Also, finding our Reliquary Tower would not be the worst thing. With all the card draw going on, we're probably going to hit max hand size pretty soon. We draw a Beastmaster Ascension. Good card, but just kind of looking for a land right there. Hapatra coming into play. Going to equip up the boots. Opponent's commenting, hordes of small creatures versus 1 counter seems like a bad mix. So, yeah, I totally understand why the Balthor opponent's going after Hapatra. And again, I'm completely okay with that. So the creator of the deck mentioned in the description that one of the greatest strengths of this deck is that no one perceives you as a threat, so they'll generally leave you alone. This is the 4th or 5th game I've played with the deck. I had some trouble finding good ones to record, and I can confirm that most people will just let you be at the table because they really don't perceive Anthausa as much of a threat. So Golgari Rot Farm for the Hapatra opponent. The Ravnica bounce lands work pretty well when there's a Rites of Flourishing out. Phyrexian Reclamation for the Hapatra opponent. Good card. Hapatra swinging into the Balthor opponent. Balthor down to 38. Hapatra is going to get a trigger. Put a -1/-1 counter on the Crypt Keeper. Going to sack Crypt Keeper in response and exile a card from Hapatra's graveyard. The Splendid Agony is now exiled. So Howling Mine Rites of Flourishing on the stack. Whip of Erebos for the Balthor opponent. That's a card that'll make it really hard to kill them, especially if they have hordes of zombies. Dark Salvation. Who did he target? Oh, Dark Salvation targeted the Snake token X1, gets a zombie, and opponent is attacking in with 2 zombies at the Hapatra opponent. So Hapatra down to 28. All right, we draw some lands. Sweet. Let's lay down our Mosswort Bridge. See if we get anything cool on the hideaway. Well, there's our Reliquary Tower, unfortunately. I'm pretty sure you can't play lands, or at least, there was a bug on Magic Online where you couldn't play lands off of these hideaway abilities. So I'm just going to put Soul's Majesty under there, because I don't want a chance exiling that Reliquary Tower. So Reliquary Tower is now on the bottom. We'll need to find a way to dig that out. I really don't want to run the Beastmaster Ascension out right here, because I know that we're going to have to Ugin at some point. So I think this turn I'm going to... Yeah, this turn, let's see. Okay, so we're just going to sack the Blighted Woodland right here, get some lands, keep bumping up our mana count. We'll just stay put. No real need to make any enemies right here. What's a discard? We'll discard the Aggressive Urge. Really don't want to get rid of that forest. We'll say the Nature's Way. So a bunch of triggers for the Kaneo's opponent. Kodama's Reach for the Kaneo's opponent. Right now I'm thinking that next turn Ugin will be the play that we want. Because right now, we can actually exile X4 and leave our Anthausa in play. There isn't anything bigger than that our opponents... And also, I think that our opponents are probably going to start laying down big threats this turn. So we'll see what happens when it comes back to our turn. But I'm thinking Ugin is probably where we want to be. And that'll clear the road for all of our little forest warriors to get into the red zone. We're going to put a land into play off of the Kaneos ability. Runescar Demon coming into play. Runescar will make it tricky to use our Ugin. There might be better plays available to us. Oh, and a Dream Fracture. So, Runescar Demon getting countered. Nice. More importantly, that Dream Fracture isn't coming at our Ugin. Opponent still has 2 blue up, so they could still have a counterspell in hand very easily. Nest of Scarabs. Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on target creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. Interesting. The other thing we could do on our next turn is play Howl of the Night Pack. That would get us at least 8 tokens. And we can use that in combination with Anthausa's ability to fire up the Beastmaster Ascension, and we can probably take down a couple people on the turn following that. Depending on what happens right here, that might be the play we go with. Liliana's Mastery coming in. Zombies get +1/+1 and create 2 2/2 black zombies. So a bunch of 3/3s on the board now with Lifelink and Menace for the Balthor opponent. Nothing to sneeze at. And a Graveborn Muse. Oh my god. Graveborn Muse with that many zombies, they're going to eat large chunks of their life. Although, I guess they have the lifelink to get it back, so might have to be careful of that as well. And a Zombie Master coming into play. So I think Ugin's probably the play right here. And then do Howl of the Night Pack on the turn following that. Unfortunately, to hit the Liliana's Mastery, we will need to go X5, and that'll take down our Anthausa. Opponent says they feel bad about countering the Runescar Demon. So Hapatra down to 17. Back to our turn, we're going to get some draw triggers. Oh, and we just drew a Triumph of the Hordes. Ooh, and our Reliquary Tower. Awesome. Alright, so lay down our Reliquary Tower, lay down this Strip Mine. I'm going to cast Ugin because other than the 2 blue mana, everything else is tapped out. So he could still be holding a counter spell, but I think it's worth the risk. No one else really has any mana open beside that, so they won't be able to respond super well. So I'm going to go Ugin X5. We could go X4. We'll leave the Liliana's Mastery. That way we don't have to recast our Enthausa. So Ugin X4, this should clear out a lot of the crap on the board. And we'll play this Harmonize, since we have a Reliquary Tower. And we will go to combat on the Balthor opponent. They go down to 47. Magus of the Vineyard coming into play, so that'll be good for us. That's even more mana. Selvala Explorer Returned coming into play. Swans of Burn Argol coming into play. Very strange card if you guys have never played the Seismic Swans deck. It's a 4/3 flying. If a source would deal damage to swans, prevent that damage, that source's controller draws cards equal to the damage prevented this way. Very interesting card. Mana Reflection for the Hapatra opponent. Archfiend of Ifnir coming into play. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. Ah, that could be bad. So Archfiend coming into Ugin, I'm fine with that. Ugin did what it needed to do. It cleaned up the board and really slowed a lot of things down. Do need to be careful of this Archfiend, though. If opponent can cycle after our lands become creatures, we could potentially lose a lot of lands, and that would be really bad. So Ugin down. Crumbling Ashes. At the beginning of your upkeep, destroy target creature with a -1/-1 counter on it. Eee. So a bunch of triggers, Magus and Howling Mine for the Balthor opponent. Carniphage coming into play. Withered Wretch. Phyrexian Ghoul. Shepherd of Rot. Oh, Withered Wretch is exiling cards from graveyards. I'm fine with that. So we get a Magus trigger, we draw some stuff, play a forest. I actually really like Izuri's Predation right here. Yeah, let's do that. So opponent's going to putrefy the Withered Wretch, which seems redundant. Not really sure what they were planning right there. So opponent sacrifices a bunch of things to pump up their Phyrexian Ghoul so they still have a creature left in play. Our beast tokens trade with some things. I was hoping to get more beast tokens out of that, to be completely honest. So I think we'll use our Carpet of Flowers, use Cultivate, and we can wait on the Soul's Majesty, actually. We'll wait on that until Enthausa's really, really big, and then we'll draw like half of our deck. I like that plan. So in the meantime, we will use this Nature's Lore, get another land, and we'll take a little shot at the Hapatra right here, since they are out of blockers. Try to get this game moving along. So we get 1 mana off the Carpet of Flowers. I'm going to lay down our Beastmaster Ascension right here. Pass the turn. As long as nothing goes terribly wrong in this turn cycle, we're set up to possibly close out the game next turn. Wargate for our opponent. X6. Wonder what they're going for. Hivemind. Oh, that's bad. That's real bad. Oh, God. Words of Wisdom. You draw 2 cards and each other player draws 2 cards. So everyone's going to draw a million cards. I hope they didn't find one of the Future Sight cards that makes you lose the game when you can't pay its upkeep, because that would be real bad for us. So opponent discards the hand size, discards a Girapor Orrery, Rampant Growth. Girapor Orrery would be very good for this deck, actually. Opponent says, if you are wondering, I'm not running any packs. The packs are the card that make you lose to Hivemind, because chances are you don't have the colors to pay whatever the upkeep cost is. Opponent says they just really like Hivemind a lot. That's cool. It's a wacky card. Necroskidder coming into play. Wither, and whenever a creature an opponent controls with a -1/-1 counter dies, you may return that card to the battlefield under your control. Necroskidder has always been a super underwhelming card. It'd probably be way better if they made it like a 2/2 instead of a 1/4. They really went the wrong way on that one. It was also especially weird because it came out at a time when creatures just didn't have toughness in the Lorwyn Shadowmoor block. Most things had like 2 toughness other than a small handful of cards. Doubling Season for our opponent. That can get real bad. Hopefully they don't have too much else they can do. So it's turn 7, and we have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 lands in play. That's what happens when you have a Kaneos opponent on top of the Rites of Flourishing that we played and just all of the ramping that we did. Very crazy game. Necroskidder attacks into the Balthor opponent. Balthor the Defiled coming into play. Endless Ranks of the Dead coming in for the Balthor opponent. Also a Crypt Breaker. Shepherd of Rot is... so we use Balthor's ability to get back a handful of things. Crypt Keeper's back, Cemetery Reaper, Carniphage, Withered Wretch, Shepherd of Rot, and the Crypt Breaker into play. Using the Crypt Breaker ability to draw some cards, Relentless Dead comes into play. And back to our turn. Okay, we are in a very good position to try to finish this game up. Carpet of Flowers ability going onto the stack. Choose a player with some islands. So as long as Beastmaster Ascension stays in play, we're in pretty good shape right here. And as long as there's not really removal. So use the ability. Get 1 mana. Okay, so play a forest. Start with our Bear Umbra. Use Enthousa's ability. Oh, so the Darksteel Citadel is indestructible, which is nice because it's a little combo I didn't notice. You can attack with it and it won't die. Neat little trick. I was wondering why it was in the deck and I hadn't really thought about it, I guess. So that would make sense. Really need our opponent to F6 right here. Next we'll hit Anthausa again with the Viridescent Wisps. So each player is going to get to copy the Viridescent Wisps because of the Hive Mind. So we draw a card. It is Alpha Status. Oh yeah, that's the one we want. Make sure we have enough mana to do all this. So play Alpha Status. And then finally play this Triumph of Hordes. So each player is going to get to copy the Triumph of Hordes. And now we go to combat. So send that there. And attack like that. So we get a ton of triggers. So 1 opponent scoops. And now our creatures are massive off of the Beastmaster Ascension. And Thausa is a 30-29. With Infect and Trample. Nice. Plus all of our lands on tap, which is nice. We have Vines of Vastwood open, in case something should go wrong. So there it is. Finally won. Had to wait for an opponent to time out. So Anthausa Citizen who? I think our opponents just found out who. With large trampling creatures. So, some thoughts on the deck. I like the deck. It's cool, it's fun, it's interesting. It does have some problems, though. It took me about 5 games to really find a game where we could excel, and Kineos and Tiro of Miletus were a big reason we were able to do some of the things we were able to do in that game. The thing I found is, it really takes a ton of lands for this deck to operate, because when you go to cast something like an Overrun or similar type of effect, you're using your mana to do that, but by using your mana, you're reducing the number of attackers that will be available to you. So it's very tricky trying to figure out how to use your mana and how to get enough attackers so that you can actually get in meaningful damage. Now, the other problem I saw is in matches where Anthausa gets removed. When Anthausa dies, this deck can't do a whole lot. It relies very heavily on Anthausa being on the board. So I saw that as another issue. However, I think there are some things that will help significantly. As I've mentioned previously, there were a bunch of changes that I made just so that I could keep up with the Magic Online meta. It can be pretty quick and it can be pretty tough. So you gotta have a pretty solid deck coming in. And there isn't really a lot of time to just kind of wait around for things to happen. So getting some additional card draw, getting some additional ramp, I found those to be very helpful. One of the things about this past game, too, that mid-game Ugin that we played really cleared out a lot of the crap that was on board that was going to make life real bad for us. So just having that ability to clear everything out and buy ourselves the time we needed to really ramp up the lands and get our tokens going was a really big deal. So I think one of the things to prioritize with this deck is just getting as many lands into play as possible. So I added 4 mana Find 2 lands and put them into play cards, which I think are very key, because this deck just needs so many lands. In that last game, we had like 15 lands, and we were still very close to running out of mana and being able to do everything all in one turn. One of the other problems I noticed as well is that when you attack and you're not going for an alpha strike, there is a tendency to lose some of your creatures, which are your lands. So that can be kind of tricky, because you kind of need to play this deck as an all-in, one-shot creature combo kill, basically, making a ton of tokens and pumping them up like crazy. I really think that just getting as many lands as possible into play is a really big deal. So I could see variation where you play this like a group hug deck and you run Howling Mine and Temple Bell and all those sort of things, so that yes, everyone else is drawing, but you're drawing too, also Horn of Greed, so that way you're constantly making all your land drops. Things like Gaia's Touch, Explore, which isn't currently in the deck list, and Rites of Flourishing really help you power out a ton of lands, and I think that's where this deck wants to be. So congratulations to Danny Talon on the deck. I really enjoyed playing it. It was a very unique style of deck to play, because your lands are your creatures, and you have to manage them very effectively. Otherwise, you either won't have enough creatures or you won't have enough mana. But the deck concept is really cool. I like it a lot. Thank you for the submission. Thank you for everyone else who submitted decks. And I hope to check out some more of your guys' builds in the future when I do some more of these viewer-submitted challenges. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for watching.